Hello and welcome to Gamecity XP Boost. I'm Maggie, I'm project manager at Gamecity Hamburg and your host for tonight. For everybody who might not be familiar with us, Gamecity Hamburg is the local initiative to support the games industry here in our lovely city of Hamburg in Germany. And apart from our local events and funding programs, we also host several online formats to support indie game developers all around the world. So if you are an indie dev looking for input, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. With our XP series, we cover the most pressing topics for indie developers. And tonight we'll talk about self-publishing and marketing for your game when you don't want to do it. You probably wouldn't be watching this live stream if you didn't enjoy making games, but marketing your own game can be quite overwhelming for many devs. So in the past, it seemed like a simple solution to find a publisher who takes care of those things. But since it has gotten harder and harder to find a publisher, and since many publishers want to see tens of thousands of wish lists before even signing your game, doing marketing yourself has become much more central. I said we try to cover the most pressing topics, but we also try to get the industry's very best experts to cover those topics. And we could not be happier with today's speaker, who is known for some wonderfully creative and outstanding community campaigns, who has actually written the book on community management and marketing for games, and whose newsletter both educates and entertains professionals throughout the games industry. Very nice to have you here, and thank you for joining Gamecity XP Boost, Victoria.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. And when you're thinking of this new game, you have two options for getting it to market. First one, publisher. Second one, you self-publish. And when presented with these two options, you would probably pick the publisher route. Yes, everyone loves a publisher. Everyone wants to have that kind of support. And they are the best choice for getting your game out to market. Unless it isn't. What if getting a publisher isn't actually the best thing for your game, or you can't get your game signed and now you have to self-publish anyway, which is probably the case? Sorry. That is what this talk is about. So it's about doing self-publishing and marketing when you don't necessarily want to do it. And this talk is less about how to do it specifically and more about how you can set everything else so that you can actually do it. Because I think one of the things that I really ran into when I talk to people about this is I don't have time, I'm really busy, it's hard enough making a game, and now I have to publish it and market it. I'll set this up for you. This is a pretty dense talk, and I'll go through things pretty quickly, but luckily it will be on YouTube, so you can flip around and check on it. So I assure you, you will be able to do this. No panic. But before I get too deep into the weeds, I did want to do a little bit of an intro. My name is Victoria Tran. I'm the communications director at Innersloth. We worked on a game called Among Us. I'm also something at Outersloth. We don't really have titles for that, but Outersloth is basically our indie game fund, and I basically help run that and help sign games. I'm also an organizer at Wholesome Games, business and marketing advisory board member at GDC, and I previously have worked on games like Venba, Unpacking, Boyfriend Dungeon. The main point here is that I am very much in the indie game space. That is where all my experience is. And thanks to working in a studio, a game fund, and a showcase, I get to see a lot of different struggles indies need to go through. So hopefully this will be a little well-rounded thing for you that helps out. Some disclaimers is that you need to trust no one. I know I'm doing a whole talk about this and I'm giving advice, but truly no one knows the game better than you. And this is not a talk to hate on or discourage you from publishers or agencies either. It's more to make sure you understand your options and all of the pain that comes with any option that you pick when it comes to publishing or self-publishing. And we really do need to talk about the reality of the situation of game development and publishing, which is that publishers sign 0.16% of games on average, or said differently, 1 to 2 games for every 1,000 pitches that they receive. So even if you want a publisher for your game, the chances are kind of low, unfortunately. But why are even people looking for a publisher or from publishers if it is so difficult to get into one? Well, there's a number of different things. So development funds, straight up, this one is very hard to get. I totally understand if you sign with a publisher because you need You need money to make your game. You also have things like business development, platform relationships, and marketing. This is also very hard. And I argue in this talk, it would be very beneficial for you to own these relationships rather than just your publisher, but we will go into that. You also have things like release management, localization, QA, marketing. The rationale here is that traditional publishers aren't necessarily any better than you are when it comes to these services. So marketing, QA, localization. It's more that they have the network and they already know who they like to work with and who they trust to work with. But again, this is something that you could actually do yourself, either by partially outsourcing it or completely outsourcing it. But the thing that we will be tackling for this talk, mostly today, is marketing, of course. But I hope the advice I give you can open up avenues for you to think about the other ways you can handle what a publisher could traditionally do for you. And here are the things, that I've heard. It's like, why do you want a publisher? You don't have time. You want the security of someone experience. You hate marketing. I get it. And you don't know how to do it. So you want a publisher to handle it. And one of the things that I actually heard from one of our Outersloth studios that we funded is that their biggest fear toward self-publishing was how inaccessible it seemed, as if there was some secret towards game development that only a publisher would know what to do. And it doesn't need to be this mysterious black box that it seems to be. They kind of want it to be so that you feel like you can't do it yourself, but you truly do have the tools that you need to clear the fear of doing things on your own. And do you know what is worse than getting a publisher? It is getting a publisher with really bad contract terms. So keep that in mind. Read what your contract says. Ask around. Again, no hate to publishers. The games industry is better when there are more options and support methods available to game developers. There are plenty of publishers who have done great things for the games that they've signed. So, keep that in mind. But I do want to talk a little bit about Outersloth data, again, our indie game fund, and the fears and troubles of self-publishing when it comes to that, because I think this will help also align what I'm talking about. So again, Outersloth is our indie game fund that we made through the success of Among Us. What do you do when you have a bunch of money? It's like, why not fund other games? And the whole point of Outersloth is that we are super hands-off. We do not offer marketing support. We do not offer localization. We do not offer QA. We don't do release management. We're like, we'll just literally, what we promise is money. That's it. Everything else you have to handle, which is great for some studios. And then some studios realize, oh no, I have to do this myself. But we think it's a really great learning opportunity and not a thing that a lot of people get into. So at Outersloth, because we don't offer marketing, localization, QA, we can offer better contract terms for the money that we give, but we also only sign 1.4% of games on average. So this also isn't a very high number, and more than likely, you might not get the funding. So from the insights that I have from Outersloth, from looking at pitch reviews that I get, everyone loves to ask for marketing help, but no one really provides a marketing budget. And this is something that you really need to think about when you are making your own game, because you don't want to have all your development costs done and then forget that marketing costs money. Whether that is your time doing it yourself, whether you're hiring a community manager, whether you're hiring a PR agency, that's gonna make a difference. And then when I do have meetings with people, and if they don't provide a marketing budget, I'll obviously go like, so what is your marketing plan? Because at some point you do need to release this game, and what's going to happen there? And then they say they don't know. And then that makes me very sad. So I think one of the things that people don't really consider is that even when you have a publisher, and I have confirmed this with studios who have had publishers, you should still always be thinking of marketing. A publisher never just wants to own the entire thing for you because they have a portfolio and slate of other games that they need to focus on. And unless you're doing like huge numbers for them and it's very guaranteed that you're going to give them back a ton of money, it still is very important for you to be able to do your own marketing. And honestly, the minute a game trend pops up, I'll see like 10 different pitches of that exact genre in Outersloth. And you really want to think about how you can pitch your game to either a games fund or a publisher that isn't just, I will make you so much money, because that doesn't really get anyone excited. You need to think about your game, your genre, voids, niches, or mashups to make the game interesting. And why do people avoid self-publishing? It's hard, distracting, overwhelming to learn. You just want to make the game. It all sucks. But the biggest thing that I hear people say is that they're just worried that the game will fail if they do publishing themselves. But this will happen with a publisher too. Again, I know this doesn't seem very positive at the moment, but trust me, it'll be okay. So with all of this struggle, all of this hurt, why should you self-publish? One is rev share. Rev share is huge for you. Do not give it up easily. I know there's a lot of terms out there and people are like, it's very common to give up like 30% of your revenue. And I get it, but you should never be really willing to sign a ton of your rev share out, and you may never, because you may never get it back. And then you also never want to lose your IP. So just keep that in mind when you're doing when you're trying to look for a publisher. You also own the relationships when you self-publish. So again, localization companies, marketing, QA, relationships with the third-party platforms like Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo. If you can own those relationships yourself and it's not gate-kept through a different publisher, even though you might be like, oh, but it'd be so nice if they just handle all the emails and everything. If your studio can own that yourself, and in future games, if you need to talk to one of these publishers, you're not, or one of these third-party platforms, you're not beholden to your publisher to actually do it. One of our own Outersloth studios was talking to localization companies, and they don't usually deal with it, which they thought was a challenge, but also a blessing because they finally understand the full picture of what goes on with the game and the pricing and everything that happens there when you produce a full game. You also know what to look for when you hire for help. That is very important. You have a better understanding of your own project and how to market it. You'll build up your own fan base and community. And again, not just rely on the publisher to build that up yourself and hopefully, create your own big community, which is obviously something I'm very interested in. And then you set yourself up for future success, which is great. Okay, we'll dive a little into studio budget. I still want people to start looking for marketing too, and maybe some other unknowns. All right, example of the budget from a studio we signed. This is when they actually include the marketing in the graph, which is great. The basics of budgeting. Usual costs, you get the programmers, artists, designer, audio production, all that sort of thing. Sometimes QA marketing if you put it in. Don't forget about the smaller things like accountants and lawyers, and then any contingency costs are normal. But if you have anything over 10%, this can be a red flag to publishers or funders because it kind of shows that you're not really sure where your money is going, and that's not something that they love. Trying to account for everything is a really good exercise, mostly to get some perspective on what you might not be accounting for, whether that's for your game dev cycle or for marketing. So when you estimate your budget, use as much real info as possible. And for any other unknowns, you can ask agencies for quotes. I always suggest that you do this, even if you haven't hired them yet. More than likely, agencies are super down to just give you their services and like how much it would cost. You can also Google average salaries for roles that you don't necessarily already have. If you don't get funding, which is very real, you will have to operate on one of these options, basically. So either you can defer salaries if it's just you and who knows, like a friend, and you guys are okay with that. You can put contractors on hold. You can have multiple budgets or schedules set up. So one situation in which you don't get funding, one situation in which you get partial funding, another where you're fully funded, and you can kind of track what you want to do there. Or you can treat the game as your side hustle. This one is a little bit difficult because, I get it can be very tiring even if you're working a full-time job. But it is possible if you pace yourself. It's the reality of the situation. We've had Outersloth studios before they got funding who just treated the game as a side hustle until they could get the funding. So keep that in mind. And avoid unrealistic expectations about your deadlines when it comes to this. So if we budget for marketing, though, it'll be about 10 to 50% of your production budget, which is not a very, tight range. That is a lot that could happen there. But this can basically be time or cost or both. And it all depends, again, on the genre and your studio and how much resources you have, whether you're hiring someone, whether you are just doing it yourself. And so instead of spending 8 hours programming, you spend 4 hours programming and 4 hours doing marketing work. It all depends on how you want to approach this. So marketing will take a minimum of 3 months full-time work. This is like bare minimum, by the way. I wouldn't suggest this, but it is technically what I would put, even if you have a publisher. It requires oversight. It requires that you need someone to approve things, someone to post on social. You're the one who writes the devs logs and reports to your publisher, all that sort of thing. This is very much not what I would recommend. At least like thinking about marketing right from the start is the ideal. 6 months if you're going to start hiring someone. 3 months is if, you know, it's really tight. But the more time you give it, the more chances of success. All right, I've done the groundwork. It is time to start going into the actual work, right? So you have your marketing options. 2 options: hire an agency or do it yourself. For simplicity's sake, I'm counting hiring an in-house marketing or community manager as do it yourself, just because my tips will help no matter if you're doing it yourself or hiring someone. Just keep that in mind. So first we'll go through the marketing agency. You're thinking, amazing, so I can just hire a marketing agency. No, don't do that. We don't like this. You still have to do the work. My whole thing is that you have to still do the work, even if you think you don't have to. Another Outersloth studio that we had, these were newer devs. They said that they hired a marketing or a PR agency because they hoped that their media relations could kickstart a community and generate wish lists, and this would circumvent our issue of having no social media presence. No, stop. I don't like it when people do this, and I understand why you think this though. Don't over-index on what any agency can give you and consider what relationships, again, are worth owning. This is what an agency can offer you. This is a huge list. You don't need to worry about reading it all. This is just, again, options, and you don't need all of these things. Do you really need paid advertisements? Are your competitors using paid advertisements that are actually indie? Probably not. But if you go into a meeting with them not knowing what you want or what a reasonable price for these kinds of things are, it'll be really easy for them to do a blanket take it all approach for you because they assume you don't want to do anything and you want everything. And no matter how nice they are still selling a service, right? And the thing about this is that they will, because it feels like you don't want to do any of it, of course, they will try to give you as many options as possible to help make your game as successful as possible without necessarily knowing that you don't need all of these things. And things can get expensive really fast. You pay for their services on top of the usual costs. So for example, if you wanted influencers, you'd have to do the sponsorship amount for the influencers and the amount of cost to hire this PR agency to manage the campaign. And this can feel so overwhelming. It's not even a matter of skill at this point, but a matter of time and resources. So while self-publishing has more freedom, it means you're more responsible for many more things and you're screaming, but shh, it's okay. It's okay. You got this. We got this. We will work on this together. Again, no hate to marketing agencies. I advise you to only turn to a PR agency only after you've done actually a significant amount of the groundwork yourself, learning how to do everything. Make that extra effort to research what others have done and what things people do to create buzz. And don't conflate a marketing agency with an in-house hire. They do very different things. Knowing what you need and what they can do in order to fully utilize their work is great and will maximize their full potential. And then finally, we get to doing it yourself. The dreaded thing people think about. Note, people don't read, people don't care. People will take the biggest shortcut to know about your game. People will watch your TikTok at 2 times speed. So when you are thinking about self-publishing, you want to make it as digestible as possible and to make people feel some type of way. And here's my quick cheat sheet for that. First is internal marketing. So this is things that you would do inside your own studio, control it yourself. Your game. You should always know what your game is, who it is appealing to, and where it lies in the genre that you're looking at. We want to analyze your game because this is obviously the focus of our efforts. Not only is this on the game design, aesthetic, and themes, but also having some idea of the market it is entering and your competition. And again, similar to Outersloth, when a big game blows up, so let's say Vampire Survivors, there's going to be like 10 different other studios who are like, I can make a Vampire Survivors. And then you'll have to enter somewhat of a crowded competition market. Different markets contain different challenges, so you do need to know, again, what kind of field you're playing in. So, for example, making a Metroidvania means you'll be entering an already saturated genre. Lots of people make these games. The problem here, the challenge will be, it will be hard to stand out. A less popular genre might mean you can stand out more easily, but it'll be more difficult to find an audience that's actually interested in it because that's just not what people are looking for. That's not what people are playing right now. So that's what Among Us was when it first started out. Then, of course, like what I said with Vampire Survivors, there's a trending genre. And then it could be that the genre is actually oversaturated by the time you release, because obviously it takes time. Can you make the game fast enough compared to everyone else? Do you have the skills? If you maybe make it in time, it can stand out more easily, but again, it might be a little bit more difficult. So your game is basically your main marketing tool, and marketing is a multiplier. It doesn't make your game good. Your game at its base has to have something that people are interested in. And a lot of developers like to think that the only thing that they are missing is marketing, and their game is great, but literally the only reason their game flopped was marketing. This is not really the case. Genuinely scrutinize your game and where it is in the market and its competition. For some games, it doesn't really matter what you do. They're going to be difficult to sell, and you need to know that going into this so you can account for it in your marketing, in your work, and honestly in your budget calculations. Okay, I'll show you two games that are both technically card games. You can tell me which one automatically appeals to you. All right, two very different vibes. Already from the cues that the game gives, you can get a sense of which one appeals to you based on what you might be looking for. Neither of these games are necessarily better than the other. It's just they're clearly just different genre, different intensities, different moods. It doesn't need to be so UI explicit either. It could be something that's just like this. You might not necessarily know what you're doing in the game yet, but you can already kind of tell what you can expect just from the vibes itself. And I really like this talk, this kind of old talk now, I guess, from Nick from Slime Rancher, of just, can your game design fit inside of a GIF? This is a really easy way to start your marketing. Again, there's so much more to this. This is one slide of a giant GDC talk, but give it a listen to if you haven't. And that's because like you as a player have very certain motivations and preferences. At a glance, a game will show you what it's about and appeal to something that is likely in this gamer motivation model by Quantic Foundry. What does your game tackle? If you're struggling with this, think about why you're excited about your game first to get a start. And then from the gamer motivation model, you can see what drives player preferences and patterns. Pick a max of 2. Some people will get really caught up in this and like try to pick out everything, but it's the thing where if you are trying to appeal to everyone, you will appeal to no one. So really focus on what you want players to feel, what you want gamers to be motivated by when you are actually making your game. Okay, so with that kind of background knowledge, we can kind of work on where our marketing comes from. So this is the game's unique selling points, or USPs for short. The first one is what you do well as a studio. This is what we call a SWOT analysis in marketing. You don't have to go super in depth about it. It's a helpful framework if you don't know where to start, though. Again, there will be more resources, but think about the strengths. So what you do well, like maybe you are really a talented programmer, you really know procedural generation well. Your weaknesses, your art, let's say, is weaker than others. Opportunities, so is there an open market? Is there a gap in the market? Are you doing a mashup? So then you can slot in very nice there. And threats, so things like there are GTA 6 is coming out or something like that during the time that you want to release, and think about that. And then you can think about what your core audience wants. So these are motivations, likes, dislikes, aesthetics, audio. You should know this based off of knowing what makes the genre exciting and the gamer motivation model that we just talked about. This will create your unique selling points, and they're going to be super important moving forward in this talk. This is where a lot of our marketing draws information from, so you want to make sure you've nailed it down. It can be refined over time as you see what people get excited about, but never forget them. You want to always be thinking about Why do people care about your game? It is not this. This is not what your unique selling points is. A lot of people get kind of caught up with like benchmarks and competitors, and I'll see a lot of graphs like this, and I need you to be so real with me. Is your game actually, with the budget and the know-how, stronger than Marvel Snap and also in the Slay, same pool as Slay the Spire? It might be if actually people played it, but it is you're comparing yourself to big budgets, to games that are like standouts in their genre. So when you're talking about benchmarks or competitors, a competitor is someone who's been in development or released within 3 years of your own game. And a benchmark is a game that is successful or stand out in popularity or recognition from past and present, and maybe is out of your revenue bracket. You want to just, when you're looking at other games for your unique selling points, not get too caught up in only the big names, and think about what else is happening within the space that you're working with. All right. So next, when we're talking about internal marketing, you can think about your store page. So it basically efficiently translates your game's unique selling points to its players. Steam wants to make money, so you want to make Steam work for you. If your game helps them do that more and helps them make money even better, they will promote the hell out of your game, whether it's through their algorithm, and that's why we're always talking about wish lists, followers, etc. When we write your store page, you do want to think about the text. That's obviously very important. Write a fact about what you do in the game, and then think about the vibe and feeling you want people to have when they are experiencing the game. You can combine them, experiment with the tone, cut out words that make it too long or bulky. You can always test out thumbnails, trailers, and screenshots. If you go into your Steam backend, and I recommend this for any platform that you're in, tinker around in their little marketing backend to see what kind of data that they give, what kind of things you can track. Backend, the tags are very important. And then track it. Always track your data. I think this is something, especially if you're not quite attuned to marketing and you like data, this can be something that is very helpful to actually figure out what's working. If your click-through rate increases when you change a thumbnail, that probably means that your art that you've made for that is doing pretty well, and you might want to continue going that route. Next is your trailer. This is a really quick distillation of your game in the most digestible format. It's used by major platforms, outlets, and players to promote your game, obviously very important. And you can make this in-house, and I recommend it, just trying to do it at least once so you can see like how are you actually communicating your game and talking about your game. I am ripping this from Derek Liu. He's great if you need to find out more about actual making game trailers. He does the tell, show, repeat as the most basic trailer that you can make. So you intro your game with footage to establish a genre, title card explaining the core pillar of the game. Again, this is where your unique selling point comes in. You show gameplay footage which corresponds to that, repeat, and with a montage of cool stuff. Again, this is the most basic formula for making your own trailer. And I, again, highly recommend you do that, because even if you hire out a different trailer maker, it is one of those things where you can only really start to visualize how you're going to talk about your game when you have this trailer, and it's like, does it look cool? Does it make sense? Is it too long? Especially if you are going to have a game with very deep cultural nuances, it can be very hard for an external person to understand, and you might want to be able to do it yourself a little bit to tweak around. Next is social media. This is consistent promotion of your game's content online. Why you want to do it? It's a direct line to reaching an audience at a very low cost. Again, I know people avoid it and they don't want to do it, and it's very tiring, and I agree, but it is quite important. This was a study, and over 80% of new game seekers are very likely to explore media related to their favorite genres, especially, again, as we get more and more online. It's part of the research they do to see if your game is worth playing. Are people playing it? Are people talking about it? Can they find footage of it online just to see how it plays and not just see a snazzy trailer? if they can see more of the game online, whether through social media, reading a review, it kind of nudges them forward to purchasing the game. A standard rule of thumb in marketing is that someone needs several interactions with your game before they do anything with it. So for instance, buying your game. This doesn't mean 7 direct social media interactions, by the way. It can literally mean it can be any mention of your game, whether a friend talks about it, they see a news headline about it. The more they hear about it, the more familiar it becomes. And no matter how platforms change, because I know, social media is kind of going through a flux of whatever is happening with it right now, your unique selling points are eternal. Similar to Derek's trailer, all you really need to know is that your unique selling points are your unique selling points and that you can drive that home. Show it with whatever makes sense and explain exactly what is happening at its most basic core. You can see this for how I worked on Venba's TikTok. So these are actually 3 separate screenshots of videos I made for them. And while the content is different in all 3 of these videos that I made, sometimes words would change. You can see me harping on the same point about the game. It's hard to see, but I always mention that it is a cooking and puzzle game. And to differentiate it, I ensure people know it's about South Indian cooking. When it comes to social, it really is just about that. It's showing, it's telling your unique selling points. And then one thing about social, which is really fun, is it's about interaction. You want to watch what other people are doing. You want to notice the trends, and you want to respond to people when it comes to your social media. And then, of course, we have community. This is continual engagement of your current fans. I love this. Obviously, this is my main work. Why do you want to do this? You want to build up a long-term fan base. Again, as we talk about self-publishing or publishers, owning your own players and knowing what they want and if they'll stick around with you for later is really important. So you want to engage with your audience earlier and more meaningfully. You want your content to be consistent, personalized, reactive. And also, when your team is just engaged and excited about sharing the journey, that builds a really strong, longer term relationship with players. And it's not just hype about around a launch window. How you want to do this? I have a book. I have a book all about community management, but don't worry, I will actually talk about this. That was just a plug. So you want to, one, honestly, consistently communicate with your players. There is no silver bullet to community management because community management itself is a long-term process. It is not a scattershot like marketing process where you just throw out an advertisement and you're like, come to us. Once they come to you, you have to know what you want to do with them. And this is the consistent communication. You want to funnel them into your own spaces, whether that is a newsletter, whether that is a Discord or somewhere else where you can more directly interact with them. And you want to engage with their thoughts and suggestions. The more you do this, the more you can kind of evolve your message based on how your community is responding. Your community manager can really help you refine the message and your unique selling points and how you can actually broadcast it in a way that's interesting to people and have those people get other people into your spaces. So as you know, the best recommendation tool is when your friend is recommending you something because you trust them. And it's not just coming from an influencer. It's not coming from a studio. It's coming from someone whose taste you trust. Posting, engaging, responding, and maintaining a consistent voice across all platforms is really nice. And this daily presence will really build that trust and momentum that agencies will really struggle to match. All right, that was internal marketing. We're not done. Now there's external marketing. I know you're like, oh, wow, there's already so much. Showcases. These are events for game promotion. And as someone who has worked on a lot of events, there are a lot of events. Examples, Game Awards, you know that. There's the Nintendo Directs, Summer Game Fest, PC Gaming Show, Future Gaming Show. There's more indie-friendly ones like Day of the Devs, The Mix, Wholesome Direct, 6-1 Indie. So many different showcases. How do you know what to apply to, what to do? Basically, they're really important because they can actually get your game outside of the immediate circle that you already are in. Sometimes, when we post on social media, when we share different things, it's really hard to just get outside of what we are doing and who we're talking to. And these showcases are designed to do exactly that. So when you apply to showcases, these are the things that you should be thinking about providing to the showcase, because a showcase wants to get as many eyes on it as possible. They have advertisers, they have different statistics that they're mentioning. So when I work on Wholesome Direct, for example, some of the things that I like to think about, and it can depend on the showcase, is like tier 1, like the most special thing for us is like, ooh, a game reveal, like you've never shown this game before, and you want to reveal it at this showcase. Tier 2 is a game launch, though it could be tier 1 if like your game is like a huge, like let's say it's, I don't know, let's say it's Hades 2, and you're like, we'll launch our game at your show, like we'll shadow drop, we'll launch it at your showcase. That can be very appealing too. Third can be a game release date. Then fourth could be a new game demo. Kind of 5 is anything else. Basically, the more exciting the marketing beat, the more interesting it is to a showcase. And they will ideally, because remember this is a two-way street here, they will have some sort of leverage or reputation that draws in eyeballs or press or third-party platforms that might be watching. They ideally also will have free participation for you. Some of these showcases are paid, but honestly, I don't think it is worth paying for a lot of these because you're working on really tight budget and you're an indie. A lot of the paid showcases are like, hey, if you want a slot, that's more for people who get bigger publishers, bigger funding, or are AAA. They will also have a Steam event page. It is one thing to just have something up on YouTube and another thing to have a feature on a store page, because some game showcases will have that and will have prominent visibility, and that's really nice because it's a more curated way for people to find your game, and not just people from the showcase, but people who are browsing the store page. Optional is a co-stream with creators. It is nice to get the connection with creators, but I will say it doesn't tweak the wish list numbers as much as you might think it does. So it's nice to have, but it's not necessary. Next, for external marketing, you have physical events to showcase your game. It's fun. It's a great networking tool. It is not a great tool for generating wish lists, actually. So keep that in mind, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't want to do it, because it can, again, be a great way to connect with other developers. It can be a great way to meet third-party platforms and make other relationships who knows if it'll be, helpful later on. Just don't underestimate how much work it can be. You might want to start small and local and get a solid demo just to test it out, because, there's the whole thing with having to set up a booth, having to have a really polished demo. You need probably a trailer and a screen and the TV, which costs a lot of money to just rent. But it might be interesting just to kind of get to know, and get a sense of what a physical event might be like. Next is press. This is approaching press outlets with your game's biggest marketing beats. Again, that could be a game release, that could be a game demo, etc., etc. You want reviews, articles, general buzz. It's all helpful for your game's promotion. Search engine optimization is really big, actually, and can be used for future pitching, actually. So you can be like, hey, these are all the news outlets that are interested in us. This is why in the future, maybe you want to publish our game. How? So a struggle that I've heard a lot of people have is actually expectations around communication time. So I asked a friend who works at a very big games news outlet, thank you to this anonymous friend, about timing and when they would have liked to see certain things. So first is a review key. They say 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time is great. The longer the game, the longer they get to have the game, and the more people who have a game key, especially from a big outlet, the more content they can make. Again, you want to watch out for scams though, so only do the multiple keys for really reputable news outlets. 2 is the news beat. It can be news beat. This can be day of or 1 week depending on the news that you're giving them. If it's a release date, the day before is fine. They say these ones are generally quite easy to work with. Or if it's a busy time, so something like Steam Next Fest as a particular example, and you want to get out of the crowd, you might want to send them a key a week before. Ideally, if you want more press eyes on the demo, you can send it to them early and they can do impressions before the chaos of a Steam Next Fest. But as I have seen with working with game studios, sometimes you're working on that demo right up until the release time. So we get it, but kind of try to put that into your own production timelines when you're working on this. Don't worry about reading all of this. Just an example, you can go back on it later. But this is literally just an example of what a normal press release might look like. It is not supposed to be anything super fancy. It's supposed to give people the bare minimum information that they need to write about your game. Next is influencers. So you want to approach influencers with your game's demo or launch, and you want to tap into their network of followers and reach. And as we see, influencers has been becoming more and more popular when it comes to promoting your own game. How is really dependent on, again, your game and your studio. I know it's very difficult when the answer is always it depends. But you want to consider things like engagement size, game choice, personality, and influence, content type. Like if they only play Fortnite, maybe don't send it to them. Early adopters of your game should be rewarded. So sometimes influencers will just find the game on their own, and you want to keep track of that because you want to say thank you. You want to keep them in your network and maybe engage with them in the future for other things. You also want to check their social media presence. It can get kind of spicy there. You want to make sure whoever is representing your game and whoever you work with is someone that you are actually interested in working with. Free keys and signups are absolutely the way to go for micro influencers. I've never really found it worth it to push like a paid launch campaign with creators that size. And they don't yield a lot of conversion, but they're really great just in terms of like working together, having a good network. And that budget is probably better allocated to something like PR if you wanted to do it. For a mid-tier streamer, around 5K USD. Again, this is all dependent and they might have their own rates, but just think about that when you're considering your influencers. Next is your press kit. Very important. You want it really easy for press and influencers to get the official images and logos for your game. So it's, in the best light, presented in the best light, and makes it easy for people to talk about your game. Press kit is a really great press kit is the proper word for that, is a really great page that a lot of people use, but you can use any file sharing service. I use Dropbox, there's Google Drive, whatever works, whatever makes it easier. We're almost done. Don't worry, we're getting there. We're in now the miscellaneous section of just things, right? So paid ads. Can you tell I don't really think you should be doing paid ads for your indie game? You can try, and some work and it is fine, and you can work with a PR agency who knows what they're doing, but there's a reason that an ad, like paid ads, are its own job. It is a lot of money, and you tend to need more money to make it even worth your time when you can make organic content that might do a little bit better. Are you sure you need them? Just think about it, do a little bit of research. Influencer packages, really nice to have, but at the end of the day, they're honestly a little bit more trouble than it's worth. Again, if you have someone helping you out, or you really know your ways around physical like items and manufacturing, this might not be too bad. But because now it's so much more common to have an influencer package and to do cool things, expectations for them have increased dramatically. So maybe don't think about that. Don't worry too much about it. Third-party platforms, always be pitching. You don't have to necessarily launch on a third-party platform with your first game, but you should always be trying to make that connection with them. If you don't have time to be pitching to platforms, honestly, you can focus on Steam. And if it gets big enough, people will pay attention to it, right? Your game, I don't know, what's a recent game? Let's say Megabonk. Megabonk is huge on Steam, and that probably is going to catch the attention of all the third-party platforms who are like, we would like that game on our platform. So even if you can't necessarily pitch to them right now, always kind of keep that in mind, because it's good to have those relationships. And then you want to network with other indies. Don't underestimate the power of just talking to other people's real experiences. This will help you more than a generic talk. And keep in mind, again, no one knows your game better than you. So you want to be able to talk to other people who might have had a similar-ish experience. You can also hire a consultant for help if all of this was really overwhelming and you're like, okay, I really want to learn more about how to post on social media. You can always hire someone really briefly to talk to either you or a community manager about like, hey, these are the best tips. These are the things that I looked over for your social media accounts, and this is how you can improve it. So they're not necessarily there, like, taking up a ton of your budget, but they can really help you drive the direction. Here's a very humble timeline example, because I know I said a lot and you're like, how am I going to fit this into everything? Here's a proposed timeline. This is for like just a regular maintenance month, right? So let's say for 1 hour each day, you front load your work so you can determine what you should focus on. I actually talk about community management similar to programming. So you could do programming pretty fast, right? And then you can get a lot of tech debt. If you do your community management and you don't think about it future forward, you're going to get a lot of community debt, and soon you'll be like, ooh, all these things that I set up aren't really working. So I really recommend taking the time however you want to do it. You do not have to do it like this timeline. Literally, this is just an example of how you might approach your marketing and your community. You do the first day of the month, analytics. You see how the past month went. On Tuesday, you can research showcases for a bit and see like, okay, what are the deadlines coming up? Which ones do I want to actually apply for? Wednesday can just be your content creation day. Thursday, you go around PR influencers. Friday, you post on social or you schedule your social post. Mondays, again, your free time, see what else needs work. And then after that, for Tuesdays can be just more community management work. Like you're really paying attention to Discord, you're going to the forums, you're thinking about the ways that you can create a community campaign. That's really exciting. All that to say is that if it helps you, because all of this feels very overwhelming, this is a great way to kind of start. And then it can always switch. This is the thing about marketing, right? It's always kind of moving in a weird timeline. So let's say you're launching something might change. Like you might need to focus way more on community and social right before your launch and right after your launch, because that's the most exciting time. You want people talking about the game. You want to see what's happening. So yeah, just think about this. Again, you don't actually have to do it this way, but if it helps you, like actually block out like 2 hours of your time in your calendar each day, I find that this can be very helpful for people who might not be so used to working in community management. It's not over. I lied to you. It's actually post-launch time. But no, really, we're almost done this talk. Don't worry. Post-launch time is actually a very important community and marketing time. Don't forget about it. Sales. Sales are strategic game discounts, daily deal, seasonal sales, custom sales, Steam page bundles, all that sort of thing. It is really important because they actually provide a huge visibility boost. Obviously, launch is the biggest one, but if you have a big sale coming on, if you have something else that you can work with for Steam, like that will boost it up. Among Us, actually, a lot of its popularity came from a Steam daily deal. So the best sales usually have a lack of discount competition and very high visibility. So this is something like your daily, midweek, or weekend deal, because in a daily deal, you're obviously the only one. In the weekend deals, again, similar thing. They perform best due to the lack of all these things that I just talked about. A hyper-specific Steam sale with featuring can do really well, especially for a niche, but without that sort of featuring and custom visibility and some other custom events, they only might perform a little bit better than your own custom sale. Same for seasonal. No featuring during a major Steam event can really lead to being buried and a game performing equal or if not worse to a less crowded custom period. And this is all data from our own partners at IndieBI who help us out with game sales and tracking all the game events and stuff. And featuring during a seasonal event can make a game sale uplift really rocket up depending on how you time it. I also talk more about post-launch marketing in my book, sorry. But in all, the point of this talk was to give you the starting tools to at least understand where the basis of your own marketing should go. Not every story will be a success story because not every game is a success, unfortunately, but your future work will be better informed. A lot of people's first games don't do super well. That is okay. Your work will be more confident as you learn more and more of it. This is from another one of our Outersloth studios, Neverway. They're doing super well, and I'm very happy for them. And one of the things that we worked on was that they were actually going to hire like a big PR agency for their initial launch and stuff. And I actually discouraged them from doing that because I thought they had the tools and opportunity to do it themselves. Their game had a strong enough hook, et cetera, et cetera. And this was a quote from them that it was a really good learning lesson that they could actually do a lot of marketing themselves once they actually dug into more of the resources that were available for them. All that to say is that you got this. I believe in you. It was a lot of information, but many successful indies do it, and you can too. So thank you so much for being here and listening to my talk. I know we have a question period. So yeah, thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Victoria. Awesome talk. We've already had a bunch of comments and questions on the chat. We have had loads of people who have actually read your book. For those who haven't, we posted the link, of course. And yeah, as I mentioned, we already have a couple of questions, but please feel free to post even more if you have something on your mind that was not covered yet in the talk. And I would like to start not with a question, but with a comment from Ines, who's working for the indie studio Tiny Raw, and she said, I've heard but I don't like social media so often. Doesn't change the need to do it though, and social media gets cooler with your own content out there. And I like that thought that social media feels more approachable and gets closer to you. Yeah, when you post your own content.
Oh, right. I've
Yeah,
stopped sharing my screen.
cool. Yeah, but maybe one question about or for those people who say, but I don't like social media, I don't feel like I'm a funny person, I don't feel like I'm an outgoing person, I don't know any memes that the young people are posting these days. What advice would you give them? How can they have a presence even if they maybe don't feel like they are the most entertaining people, but still want to do some social media?
Yeah, the trick to social media is that you don't have to be like a meme queen or whatnot. I think a lot of people get caught up in that because obviously that tends to go quite viral, and being viral doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing well or that it's doing the best for your game, right? You want to make sure that it suits your game's mood. For that, so like you can see, like there are some social media accounts that don't meme, and they are just very on brand when it comes to like being horrifying or being really cozy or being really mysterious, right? So for that, what I would suggest is actually going and finding games that, again, are your competitors and just seeing what they're doing and how they're talking about their own games. Some will still meme, and that's totally fine, but there's definitely going to be examples of things that you see where you're like, oh, I actually really like the way that they talk. I really like the way they post content. And how can I tweak that and make it my own and make it something that like inspires my own content? So again, I don't think you need to be very memey. I think for example, if you go back onto Venba's TikToks or even older unpacking TikToks where I'm the one working on them because I think someone else has taken over now. I don't actually meme that much on those accounts because they were much more serious in terms of their content or had like more cultural nuances, or they were just things that didn't feel quite right to meme because they were just not that kind of vibe. And you can see, oh, I'm just talking about, again, those unique selling points way more and not necessarily just focusing on like a funny joke.
All right. I think we're going to jump from topic to topic a little bit because those questions came up all through the talk. We're going to go back to the beginning, and someone's asking, what are examples of a good or a bad marketing agency job for a released game? Because they have heard a lot of bad voices about working with marketing agencies. You said you don't want to talk bad about them, which is good, but maybe you do know an example for a good job that a marketing agency did on a special game?
That's a good question. So yeah, I don't have anything right off the top of my head, but I can talk a little bit more about like maybe red flags to watch out for when you're talking to a marketing agency. And again, and it's not necessarily a red flag on them because if you also don't provide them any information about what you're looking for or your budget, they're just going to give you as many services as they can because of course they will. Why wouldn't they? So when you're talking to a marketing agency, I think the things that you need to look out for is like what conventions, what conferences do they want to send you to, and the costs involved in that, and do you actually need to be at these events? Because most of the time you don't, or they want to staff it for you and you're like, actually I can staff it myself. So just think about like where you can also cut the costs, and ask for different options when it comes to that. Obviously I don't love paid ads, so I would watch out for anyone who is leaning on not even just paid ads but also just paid influencer sponsorships, without talking about like some of the more organic ways that they can reach out to these influencers. Those are things that are really nice. And I would also kind of tackle like if they're making the trailer for you, like the cost of that and you calculating the cost yourself of doing it yourself or going to a independent trailer maker. I think a lot of it when you're just talking about these kinds of agencies is being able to talk to different agencies, seeing what each of them offers, and having your own idea of like what the costs are and like what looks like a normal cost for these things. And again, every agency will differ, especially like regionally. So just keep that in mind.
All right, thank you so much. And in which cases do you recommend for a studio to hire an in-house marketing or community person? And in which cases, maybe not?
I'm biased. I would always recommend, no, I won't do that to you. Honestly, I think if you're maybe just working on something yourself and you're like, I want to own this entire process, sure, you don't have to. But like genuinely though, I think having some sort of in-house community manager or marketer, at least at the 6-month mark, would be really helpful to you. Even better, again, near the beginning, so that they can help talk about your game. But I think especially if you are working at this point on like a second, third game, it would be really nice for you to at least experiment with having a marketing person or a community person just to see how they can help you out, how you can maybe tweak your things for a better future success, even if it is just part-time.
And thank you for that. And we were talking about trailers. How much should your trailer concentrate on just showing actual gameplay real quick versus building or telling a story or lore?
For me, I think a trailer, especially if it's your first one, should just focus on gameplay. It's different if your game is a fully narrative game. Like if your game is fully a narrative game, then the whole point is the story, then sure, that totally makes sense. But I wouldn't waste too much time like setting the scene, going through like, oh, this is the beautiful world. Like people want to know what they're going to be doing in your game. And the first few seconds of your trailer, similar to a TikTok or a social media post, are the most important. So I would really focus on showing gameplay as much as you can, showing what's cool about your game, rather than just focusing on the like beautiful backgrounds or the narrative, again, depending on your game genre.
Thank you. We also posted a link into the chat because you mentioned Derek Liu. He was actually also a guest on People's
Ah,
series, and we also think very highly of him and
he's
his
great.
advice. So definitely a tip. Yeah, we're looking into community management. Any advice on how to interact with your community in your own space, for example, Discord, when it's still relatively small and quiet?
Yes. So it's that weird struggle of like a Discord is the hardest when you have a very small number of people and a very large number of people. Because if it's too large, then it's very hard to have any kind of conversation at all. And if it's too small, you're like, okay, it's kind of awkward now. No one's talking. um, and when it comes to the smaller Discord, that's okay. That's totally normal for people not to be talking on the daily. But I think one of the things that I would suggest is like one, um, turning notifications on for Discord. I know this is only for the start and it can be very annoying, but like if someone posts in there, one of the things that really engages people, and there's like research about this, it's in my book, that the faster that you actually respond to someone, like the more invested that they become in the future, because no one wants to post something into like the void and then it's awkward for them now because they're like, well, no one's responding to me. Weird. So you want to be able to actually talk to them quite quickly and respond to them quite quickly and help them out. Like, you don't want to be too overeager, but just being able to be there within like the first 5 minutes is honestly pretty great. And the more people see is like, oh, the developer is active in here, they actually pay attention to what I'm talking about, the more other people might be more willing to talk, or you just ask a simple question, whether that's like a poll that's like, should the characters hat be red or blue, and you have a little like vote, or like you have a little discussion of like, oh, like what is like a game everyone is playing right now, I really need a new game. Just having something fun to talk about can be a really great way to get people talking, even if it's kind of quiet, and then you have to get used to that kind of awkwardness, and over time it'll become better and better.
And I guess bringing them into the development process by asking small questions like red or blue, just as you mentioned, I think that's also always a very good thing where people feel valued in what they say.
For sure.
We're jumping into the Steam sphere. Is Next Fest something you should do only if you're absolutely sure you won't get a publisher? Would you recommend having a stream up during such events on the Steam page? Okay, that's two separate questions. Maybe we'll first look at the question, because you have only one shot at Next Fest. Should you do it if you're absolutely sure that you won't get a publisher, or should you wait if you get a publisher or not?
Um, so usually when you're using your next fest slot, you would actually use it right, like pretty close to your game launch. That's the current meta when it comes to best utilizing your next fest slot. So yes, because by the time your game is almost ready for launch, you probably no publisher is probably going to sign you, and you probably wouldn't want to because you're almost done. What else are they going to do for you? So yes, only use your next fest slot if you don't have a publisher, but also your publisher, if you have one, will use your next fest slot near your launch, is the answer.
Mhm.
And the second question was about if you should do the stream on Steam, right?
Exactly, yep.
Yeah, why not? Okay, that's not a great answer. Honestly, it's one of those things where people do it and it helps in terms of like maybe if you get featuring on a Steam event and they have like that homepage and it shows some of the streams. And it doesn't hurt. And it's relatively easy to do, honestly. It is like, a little bit of annoying like setup work, but it's quite easy to do. And you don't have to live stream it. You can actually just show a pre-recorded stream, and I usually recommend that because that's way less stress. It helps a little bit, and it doesn't hurt, so I would recommend it. But I also wouldn't be like you are ruining your chances at Steam if you don't live stream the game.
I remember the very early days of this Steam feature of having a stream. I worked for a studio who used it and nobody else did, basically, or just a few studios, and that was awesome. You were always on the front page. That was really great.
But now, unfortunately,
Yeah, it's different.
everyone's caught on to it, so it's become
Yeah.
less useful.
A question about influencers. Any suggestion on where to find the right influencers? There are many and sometimes niche content creators which might not be known, so it's even more difficult to find those niche creators.
Yeah, for sure. SullyGnome.com is a pretty great website to find influencers, honestly. One of the things that you can do is you can actually search for any game. Again, this is where looking for competitors comes in. Look for a game and look for the streamers that have played the game. They have it counted by like follower size and by concurrent viewerships, all that sort of thing. And then you can kind of comb through there of like, okay, these influencers might work for my game. Again, it's sullygnome.com, SULLYGNOME.com. And similar thing actually for press is if you look at, what press have written about the competitor games, that can be really helpful. Again, this is why doing all your research beforehand is really helpful. You can always see what other people are doing.
One question for me. You mentioned press quite a bit, and also on your timeline, you had days for PR. Basically, how good do you think are the chances for small indie studios to actually get covered by press?
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. Again, it really depends on when you're emailing them and what you're emailing them about. If it's a really busy time like Steam Next Fest, it might get a little crazy. If you're sending it and it's about your game reveal and you have done your research and you know who you're talking to in terms of press, and like this is the genre that they're really interested about, they might be interested about writing it about it. And again, it's really dependent on the quality of your game, if it really stands out at the time, if there's something interesting that works with them, or you might have just a really good trailer, and that's where it gets really interesting. It's hard to say, honestly, because, again, it depends on the press taste and what they're looking for and what is exciting at the time.
All right, thank you. And we have one more question from the chat. How do you market a game that is very narrative driven and where the content potentially contains a lot of spoilers? How do you keep the community engaged?
Again, depends on the game. I know this is such a terrible answer when it comes to that, but
It's
it
true.
truly does. It depends on the game. It depends on what your narrative bits are and like what you're trying to talk about. Again, I'm just going to direct you to scroll down on the Venba TikTok to like the very beginning of it. Because that is when I had to talk about their game, and they had like a trailer, and so they only had I think 2 foods that they could show, and I couldn't actually talk about much of the narrative at all. You want to find, again, you have your unique selling points. Also, I do write about this a little bit on my website, victoriatran.com. I have an article, I think, about just creating constant content and like how to do that and how to break down your unique selling points and your topics to be more interesting. So when it comes to your narrative game, let's say, and you don't want to do spoilers, or any game that has spoilers, like you can talk about your themes. So really generic themes. So let's say cooking, give cooking tips, or talk about other things that might be involved in that universe. You can talk about the game development process. You can talk about if the mood is like really, I don't know, let's say like horror, like you can explore the different kinds of, so similar to Neverway, it's like the horrors of just the daily grind of a 9 to 5 and how depressing that can get. There's a lot of different ways that basically you can talk about the different themes of your game without necessarily spoiling all of it, but still creating really interesting discussion points. When I post on social media, I like to sometimes just think about like, okay, if I post it this way and I write this copy and put this image, it's like, is this giving people a point or a reason to engage with me? Am I asking a question? Am I creating something that invites people to share their own stories or to laugh or something? That might be a little bit more helpful when it comes to your game.
Would you say that, especially in community management or social media, is it more important to explain your game or to make it accessible, like the game idea, and make it clear to everybody what your game is about? Or is it more like creating a feeling or showing something of the world that they are looking into? Do you know what I mean? So is it more about showing the details so everybody really gets what the gameplay looks like and what your game is about, or is it more like get an emotion?
It's a little bit of both. I think those are actually 2 different functions that you should always be striving for. So one is like setting expectations for what the game is, right? You want to reach your target audience. If you are building a city simulator, you want those people who are so into city simulators, and you want to be like, this is why mine is different. This is why you can create like the best city. Clearly I play a lot of city simulators. Or like 2 Point Museum actually is a game that I've played. Like this is why it's really exciting to make your own museum. These are the kinds of exhibits you can use. These are all the things that you can learn about different exhibits, let's say. So that's like informing the community and your potential players about what your game is, so they're not disappointed when they go in and they're like, this isn't what I thought it was. And then the second part is a feeling and an emotion. And you should also always be, it's basically 2 different content pools. It's like, hey, if you play 2 Point Museum, you'll really feel like you're like a museum curator and you're discovering new things. And isn't that really exciting? And isn't this weird? Like this one exhibit, like why is it doing that? You want to kind of still create that intrigue and that emotion, because once you have like both the emotion and the informed opinion of what the game is, I think that creates a better value proposition for your game.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I think we're moving into the last questions now. Chat, if you have anything more to ask, please post it now. There's one more question. Do you have any tips for upcoming Kickstarter launches?
Ooh, interesting. So I haven't done, and I did a GDC talk about this in 2019, I believe. And again, I put it on my website. I think there's a place where I put all my talks. Kickstarter I haven't done, like very honestly, in a very long time. Last one was 2019, so things could have changed. But I think when it comes to a Kickstarter, it's honestly extremely similar to a Steam page, except now you also need to convince people that you can actually make it. So just be wary of the dollar amount that you put in and like how much you're asking for. You may be tempted to put the full amount that you need, and I understand typically that's what Kickstarter is for, but if it is like $2 million, I don't that's very difficult to hit. Even some of the most popular games haven't ever hit like that kind of number, right? So be a little bit more realistic about it. Set up interesting tiers for your, like, the stretch goals. Don't put what the dollar amount is necessarily, or sorry, put the dollar. You can put the dollar amount if you want to. Some people say don't, just like have it internally. But know like what you want to add, and again, know your budgets, know the costs. Kickstarters aren't necessarily that interesting themselves anymore because so many people do it. So just keep that in mind. And also, if you have a failed Kickstarter and you are submitting to a game fund or a game publisher, we will find it and we will see it. Keep that in mind. And also, when it comes to Kickstarters, physical gifts are very difficult actually to fulfill. I have done enough of Kickstarters with physical events, that physical items, I'm like, actually keep those to a minimum as much as you can. But overall, when it comes to actual Kickstarter page and all that, you need a very polished trailer. I know it sucks, but like with the quality of games that you see, even on Kickstarter now, it needs to almost look complete. And like you almost don't need this money, but you do. You just have to tweak the trailer to make it look really good, and inspire people. Basically, the whole point of the Kickstarter is more about like an inspiration. You want to inspire people, one, of the confidence that you can make this game, but that if they're a part of this game and they help fund it, like this is such a cool thing that they can say that they were a part of. That you want your trailer to look really good. You want your copy to be really strong about what you're offering and what you're promising to the potential backer.
Yeah, Kickstarter is also a whole big topic of its own, I think. Maybe we should
Yeah.
do an XP Boost event about that one as
You
well.
should.
I think we have covered all current questions. Yeah, that looks really good. I would like to emphasize one thing that you mentioned, which is talking to other indies. I think a very good example for that was our chat today, because they also gave each other advice, which was really awesome. Thank you so much. But most of all, thank you so much, Victoria. I think that was an awesome talk. I think I learned a lot. I could ask like 50 more questions, but I think, yeah, it's also time to let it all sink in. Once again, I can highly recommend Victoria's resources on her website, like other talks, but also, of course, the newsletter and the book. And yeah, thank you so much, Victoria, for joining us tonight. Thank you, everybody else who was on the chat and contributing and asking questions and just listening. To everybody, have a great night, and we hope to see you again for the next XP Boost. Thank you and bye.